We are about to begin with the session, and we cannot bring our esteemed guest inside unless the house is in order, like I said before. So, may I request all of you one last time to please settle down? We are going to start with the session right away.
Excuse me, who's managing these lights? There? Can you get them just a little bit dim? Yeah, just a little bit.
Come and take a seat because otherwise you'll all get wrong. There's no place. You come and look.
CIA for India.
I don't know. Let's say connected with them. Uh, Suman, uh, can we, the CII hashtag uh, sign there, the lit up, can it be switched off? Please, thank you. Right, right. Ah. Suman, the one in front of the door. Huh.
India's foreign policy is embracing new dimensions. The country is entering into bilateral and plurilateral arrangements. New partnerships are being forged.
We need it
CII
switched off.
has a strong external working with regional geographies across the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our chief guest for this session, Mr. S. Jaishankar, the Honorable Minister of External Affairs, Government of India. May I invite Mr. R. Dinesh, President CII, to give the welcome address and take the session.
Dr. Jaishankar, Chandrajit, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Let me extend my warm personal welcome to all for this special plenary session with the Honorable External Affairs Minister. We are joined today by participants from across the country and many from outside India as well. Thank you, Honorable Minister, for being with us today. You had mentioned earlier that India has been pursuing diplomacy that serves its people. It has been a privilege to observe the transformation of India's external environment under your astute guidance. You have truly brought a new visibility to India on the global stage. You have strengthened brand India as a global player. You made sure that Indian business and commercial interests are a priority for our missions, which we all have benefited from. The year gone by was especially relevant for India as it led the G20. It is a proud moment for CII to stand alongside the government in supporting this unique venture. As a secretariat for B20, CII had drafted the global business recommendations, and the G20 leaders' declaration incorporated nearly 80% of our suggestions. India, becoming a strategic partner with many relevant countries, has supported Indian industries' external engagement. This has helped us to access new markets, secure access to new technologies, and your articulation of India's position as an independent player has strengthened in the Indian industry position. Industry welcomes this approach and is following in the same direction as you. As you will well know, Honorable Minister, CII has evolved a strong global connect. This year, our outbound delegations traveled to France and Greece with the Honorable Prime Minister and with you to the Latin American countries and Africa. Wherever we go, either with ministerial visits or separately, we work with the investors, the global businesses, and governments. We well understand your focus on the global south, especially Africa. And thanks to our engagement with you, we have now managed to work closely through the Africa Summit as well as joined you on the delegations to Africa. And there's a huge opportunity to make this grow further. Minister, you have opened many new vistas for us, and we are taking it forward in the trade, investment, and engagement. The question that as we confront today as a nation is to build the industry of global scale and global capabilities. And this requires us to think about how to develop a combined approach to trade, investments, and industrial policy in the country, which will strengthen our ability to surmount the global challenges and actually, in a way, lead the world. I would like to talk about a few points and take advantage of your presence here today, Honorable Minister. First, Indian industry has to insulate itself from the unpredictability which the global scenario is posing today. We are keen to work with you and our government how to navigate through these challenges. Secondly, can India take the lead in bringing together the trade, investment, and industrial policy, which will cover not only inward investments but also enable Indian companies access the necessary technology, scale, and capability overseas. Here again, CII is very happy to engage with the government to facilitate this and make this happen. Under the Prime Minister's leadership and your stewardship, India has become the voice of the global south, and the global south is going to be the world's future growth engine. We must take the lead in defining the right set of standards, whether it be on sustainability, digital public infrastructure, the skill and technology issues, and many other global points, so that for the global south can take a place in the high table as we set these priorities for the future. This would ensure equitable and inclusive world growth. Here again, we'll be happy to work with you. We are seeing India gradually become the HR capital of the world. You have prioritized mobility for work, and CII continues to articulate this in all of our overseas engagements. The world will certainly see gaps as it grows in terms of talent shortage. We therefore need to have the narrative towards mobility rather than migration, as we are able to see that the world can be served from India and the necessary talent is developed in India for that. Finally, your leadership in establishing a trust based partnership has been of paramount importance to us as an institution. Our theme this year and earlier has been built on the word trust. In order to gain global trust, Indian industry has a role to play. We do acknowledge whether it be through our products or services and our ability to be part of global value chains. We should continue to have a track of building trust with the rest of the world through the businesses and working with you in partnership to specifically identify regions and countries where we can deepen our engagement. And that would be our priority going forward, especially in terms of certain critical territories which we have worked with you in the last 1 year and also in the past. We look forward to your advice and engagement in this connection. It's important for us to be able to develop a sector-wise global strategy and work with the strategic friends who would align with us to enable the growth of India and Indian businesses. Honorable Minister, the world is becoming an increasingly a complex place for business. Your support has greatly encouraged CII in the past, and internationalization and globalization will remain a topmost priority for us and CII. We look forward to hearing from you and taking this forward further. Thank you for being here with us. Can I now request you to give us your address, please?
President CII, Shri R. Dinesh, Director General, Shri Chandrajit Banerjee, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to join you all at the CII Annual Business Summit 2024. And it is only appropriate that the theme this year is one of co-creating the future responsibly. After all, we are in the midst of making crucial decisions about the future of the nation. As I will share with you, this happens in a challenging global context and will both contribute to what is happening in the world as well as be shaped by it. If one looks at the last 5 to 10 years, there is actually a strong contrast between the direction of India and the state of the world. At home, we have seen robust growth, sweeping reforms, radically improved governance, fiscal discipline, infrastructure progress, rapid digitization, and a focus on developing skills. The formula that has delivered is a combination of Make in India, making it easier to do business, enhancing the ease of living, committed implementation of Gati Shakti, large-scale socio-economic programs, a startup and innovation culture, and the upgrading of human resources. These, I remind you, have taken place overcoming the daunting challenges of the COVID pandemic. As a result, the outlook in India, not just the growth rate, the outlook in India is positive and confident. It says so much that the party in power is actually campaigning on its record of the last decade, reflecting a mood of pro-incumbency. In fact, it is this foundation that allows the nation to plan ahead for the next 25 years with Viksit Bharat as our goal. The world, however, looks very different. In fact, very difficult. The impact and overhang of COVID on the global economy remains strong. There is widespread realization of the dangers of over-concentration, be it in manufacturing or technology. We all saw for ourselves how our supply chains were disrupted and how the demand-supply imbalance was leveraged. This concern is now manifested in the endeavors to build more resilient and reliable supply chains, diversify centers of production, and to the extent feasible, de-risk the global economy. Developments in the digital domain have further added to this trend. In an era that values data privacy and data security, and which is poised on the threshold of an AI revolution, Trust and transparency are now at a premium when it comes to sourcing and when it comes to collaboration. The challenge here is less that of multiplicity of the supply chain and more one of its integrity and of its origin. Where the digital and manufacturing domains meet, as they do in the world of semiconductors, the predicament is doubly acute. For India, these are challenges that, with the right leadership, are being converted into opportunities. Make in India can enable us to enter the global supply chains in a break from the past. The anxieties that stem from the COVID experience have been further magnified by the conflicts, tensions, and divides of our era. A decade and a half ago, the narrative was one of harmonious globalization, of peaceful rise, and of win-win situations. Even a few years ago, the prospect of significant conflicts on a prolonged basis was inconceivable. The Abraham Accords, for example, held so much promise. On key challenges like climate change and terrorism, the hope was that convergences would actually grow. SDG targets for 2030 actually appeared within reach. Instead, today, what is the reality we are staring at? An Ukraine conflict, now in its third year, a huge escalation of violence in West Asia, Middle East, that could spread beyond, the disruption of logistics due to war, due to sanctions, drone attacks, and climate events. The world is experiencing a 3F crisis of fuel, food, and fertilizers. In Asia, new tensions have emerged in land and sea as agreements are dishonored and rule of law disregarded. Terrorism and extremism have started to consume those who have long practiced it. In many ways, we are actually going through the perfect storm. For India, the task is to mitigate its impact on itself and contribute to stabilizing the world to the extent possible. It is this judicious combination of Bharat First and Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam that defines our image as Vishwabandhu. A different dimension of the concerns that we harbor is one emanating from a combination of excessive market shares, financial domination, and technology tracking. Between them, they have actually allowed for the weaponization of virtually any form of economic activity. We have seen how both exports and imports, access to raw materials, or even stability of tourism has been utilized to exert political pressure. At the same time, the power of currency and the threat of sanctions have been deployed in the toolbox of international diplomacy. Quite apart from these conscious efforts, there have been collateral consequences of hard currency shortages and uncertain logistics. All these are driving countries to re-look at the working of globalization and to devise their own solutions. This includes exploring new partners. It includes creating shorter supply chains, building inventories, and even devising new payment arrangements. Each of these has some consequence for us. What is a common thread to all that I have described, and obviously a subject close to the CII's heart, is actually the importance of manufacturing. None of us can really deny that in the last many decades, we have fallen significantly short in this regard. There are many reasons for that, often interrelated. They include the availability of competitive in fact, subsidized alternatives, foreign alternatives, the structure of our economy, the absence of supportive policies and infrastructure, and the impact of competing priorities such as environment. Let us also recognize that till 2014, there was also no policy leadership in this regard. Not just that, we actually rationalized our predicament by preaching the virtue of services to the exclusion of manufacturing. The problem that this has created has today three major challenges. The first one is that of employment, especially for SMEs who till recently did not get the requisite support to stand up against unfair competition. The second relates to technology and the obvious proposition that a nation weak in manufacturing will never be able to develop technology strengths of its own. And the third is actually the consequence for our national security, stemming from exposure to those whose interests are competitive, if not worse. These are some of the factors that have driven the Modi government to make a determined effort and overcome the dangerous neglect of the past. You can see it expressed in the PLI, in the support for SMEs, in the creation of a more efficient infrastructure, in removing regulatory impediments, and in promoting an employment and business friendly ecosystem. Our commitment is both to enhance capabilities and competitiveness in orthodox manufacturing, as well as to enter the sunrise sectors of semiconductors, electric vehicles, batteries, green and clean technologies, drones, and space. That is the way by which the Indian economy can leapfrog in its journey towards Viksit Bharat. But we can be successful only with the full support of business. So we not only need Make in India, we need Invest in India, we need Procure in India, we need Design in India, and we need Research in India. Now, what can foreign policy do to advance India's prospects on all these issues? Where economic growth and stronger manufacturing are concerned, our focus remains on efforts to accelerate the flow of requisite capital, technology, and best practices. Our export promotion efforts, already yielding results, will intensify across the world. The use of credit lines and grants to familiarize the world with our products and capabilities will also deepen. There is the larger branding endeavor of the attraction of today's India that will make a case to the world of the benefits of partnership. Our embassies will also continue extending their fullest support to our economic and employment interests abroad. On my part, I can certainly assure that the business delegations will continue to accompany me on travels abroad, and we in MEA will facilitate B2B2G events. However, the current times call for something more than business as usual. Because trust and reliability have become so important, foreign policy is today charged with creating the comfort levels between governments to make that happen. This is especially so in terms of de-risking supply sources and enhancing collaboration in sensitive, critical, and emerging technologies. You can already see that unfold with the US in terms of the ISET dialogue that we have, and with the European Union in the Trade and Technology Council. We must recognize that our economic priorities will have to align with our strategic interests, whether we are speaking of market access, investments, technologies, or even education and tourism. This will be even more so as Make in India gathers more steam in domains like defense, semiconductors, and digital. An economy with the prospects of India also has to look at accessing global resources more seriously if we are to fuel our growth. For long, we have looked at Russia from a political or security perspective. As that country turns eastwards, fresh economic opportunities are presenting themselves. The spike in our trade and new areas of cooperation should not be regarded as a temporary phenomenon. Many other recent partnerships also offer such possibilities, such as those with Australia and with Latin America, in addition to established ones like Indonesia, Africa, and West Asia. The world is today, paradoxically, rebuilding itself even as it is being disrupted. As new production and consumption centers emerged in the last few decades, there is an accompanying compulsion to create commensurate logistic corridors. By and large, changes were incremental, with the only exception being completely nationally driven, but also non-transparent and non-consultative. From an Indian perspective, the time has now come to start re-engineering the logistical map of the world. Some steps have already been taken, such as the International North-South Transport Corridor that also involves the Chabahar Port. A more ambitious project is on the anvil in the form of the India-Middle East-Europe Economic Corridor, IMEC, which was agreed to during the G20 summit last September. One has a goal of taking us all the way to the Baltic, and the other takes us all the way to the Atlantic. To the east, the resumption of work on the India-Myanmar-Thailand trilateral highway will provide us access all the way to the Pacific. We are even examining the viability of polar routes, initially with the Chennai-Vladivostok corridor. So think of the game-changing implications that they all contain. We will actually have, with India somewhere in the center, from Atlantic and Baltic at one end, all the way to the Pacific, once these plans, and I quite understand that these are challenging, once they are implemented. So today, you will appreciate the importance of diplomatically carrying others in our quest for economic betterment. In the era of a knowledge economy, the role of Indian skills and talent are also being reassessed. The nature of technology advancement is itself creating a greater demand. But there is also the reality of demographic shortages in developed countries. These trends are manifesting themselves right now in an interest across the world to conclude mobility agreements with India. On our part, we too would like to see that our talent is treated fairly and transparently. As a global workplace emerges, and believe me, it will grow faster than all of us anticipate. As a global workplace emerges, there are some immediate consequences. Expanding the scale and quality of skilling at home becomes an even more urgent imperative. This is very much in line with the Modi government's thinking. They are supported by the spread of innovation and startup culture as well. Businesses too need to do their fair share in the upgrading of our human resources. As the global workplace expands, the obligations to secure our citizens abroad will also grow proportionately. Fortunately, this is an area where we have already built capabilities and created SOPs, as evidenced recently in Ukraine and in Sudan. We are also deploying technology more widely for ease of living of Indians traveling and working abroad. However, as we contemplate the relevance of our talent with the importance of Make in India, our goal is to make ourselves into a global hub of innovation, research, and design as well. Work in India is the natural outcome with for work in India is a natural outcome, a parallel, I would say, a supportive basis to make in India, but it will also have work for the world as its subset. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude by reminding you all that there are today ongoing debates both within the country and outside on contemporary challenges in India. Within the country, the choice is clear. There is a confidence expressed, amongst others, by the government I represent about our direction, achievements, capabilities, and talent. We firmly believe that India will develop all the requisite national strengths that will make it a leading power in the times to come. This view appreciates the creativity and the ambition of our people and is committed to providing opportunities to take that forward. It expresses an optimism about India and about our future. The alternative before the country is a return to the failed policies of the past, one that divides our society, diminishes our economic achievements, and is pessimistic about our prospects. At the global level, there is a broader consensus about India as a key source of growth, a valuable addition to supply chains, and as an important pool of talent. I have every confidence that as the people of our country make their choice, the world will welcome our efforts in the Amrit Kal to move towards a Viksit Bharat. It is a journey in which all of you, as creators of jobs, of technologies, and of wealth, you will make a crucial contribution. Just as we in the government are preparing for the 125 days after, all of you will surely be applying yourselves too to similar endeavors. That is how we will co-create our future. I look forward to a continuing partnership in the service of our nation in the times ahead. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for that phenomenal width and depth which you covered in your address. I dare not summarize points in that speech. You talked about the story in your own way, of the global story in your own way, the opportunities of the globe in India and opportunities of India in the globe. Really wanted to focus on your word trust that you used during the course of your discourse, because that will be a theme of CII as we continue from this year to the next. And we will put that very much within. You talked about partnership between the government, India, businesses, B2B2G, as we go along with you in the future, and we'll look forward to that. And we also would one point which you really mentioned was manufacturing, and you said that it was dear to CII, and yes, it is. It's much of our membership is from that, and I'm sure the questions which you have very kindly accepted to take in the next few minutes would cover some of those areas. I'll start, Honorable Minister, with our guest, our counterpart organization from across the world, from Netherlands, Edith Norman, the chairman of the Netherlands India Chamber of Commerce and Trade. Edith, would you kick off? Mic to Edith, please. Yeah.
Now it works. Thank you very much, Mr. Banerjee, Honorable Minister.
Edith, would you please come across? You're getting hidden by the
I'm
podium.
hidden behind the tree or something. Yeah. Yes. Where would you like to have me? So we're a bit closer.
Sorry about that.
No problem. It's an honor. Thank you very much. Honorable Minister, Mr. Banerjee, good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me here. My name is Edith Nordman, and I'm the chairman of the Netherlands India Chamber of Commerce and Trade. The Netherlands has had more than 75 years of excellent diplomatic relations, and also business-wise. So Delhi feels like home to me. I had the great honor of serving on the B20 task force for the future of work, skilling, and mobility during the inspiring G20 presidency of India. You already mentioned workforce as an important topic, and I can only stress that. It is with immense pride that I share how this year was marked by India's exemplary leadership on the global stage, demonstrating that a high spiritual and moral compass is the perfect foundation for inclusive growth and well-being. Honorable Minister, co-creating the future responsibly means to look at the workforce not only locally, but also globally. You just started mentioning that in your speech very, very nicely. Thank you for that. Let's give you short numbers about Europe. By 2050, Europe will lack 50 million people to remain competitive. How would you recommend that the Netherlands and Europe collaborate with India to address the workforce shortage in Europe by leveraging India's vast human capital, especially in the current climate where there are significant concerns about migration due to geopolitical issues? You already mentioned we are in a perfect storm, but still, I think we should do this together. So, how would you see that cooperation?
Thank you. Thank you. We'll take a couple of more questions from the floor before we turn to the minister. And I'll turn now to Jai Bharat Maruti Nishant and Nishant Arya, who's again producing globally for Indian products and Indian electric buses and vehicles. Nishant.
Yeah, I think so. You really motivated and inspired us with your address. You touched upon IMEC, the India Middle East European Corridor for Economic Partnership in Trade. And I think this is a great alternative to boost the trade for India vis-a-vis the BRI initiative. With the current global tensions in the region, sir, how do you see this impacting the success and the way forward? What would be India's strategy going ahead?
Right. And Shobna Kamneni, again, services sector, healthcare, you can go beyond.
Um, Actually, if I'd like your indulgence to go beyond, because I think that we all understand, the way that what you spoke for the last 20 minutes really covered a whole host of the way how you're looking at India first and Vasudeva Kutumbakam, how we can integrate it all, and you put it all together so well. So I'd actually like to ask you this was the first time you fought an election. And at that time, you really had a chance to interact with all kinds of people in India. So, how would you think that's going to affect what you would take forward, and has it changed some of the perspective? A little adjunct to that is a global question. Much of what the world was doing maybe 10 years ago would have been talking about the economics of countries and things. But now I think that now there's more worry in terms of security and safety. So how would that also impact the way that you would think forward, assuming for the next 5 years?
Sure. May I?
Yes, please.
The first observation, thank you for the nice words, but on the question, look, if Europe is going to face a workforce shortage of 50 million, just look around the world. Where are the numbers which can possibly compensate? On paper, two. I think in reality, probably one. And so when today we advocate work in India, work from India, but to you, I would say work with India. That if Europe works more with India, I think you will get some of the answers. And I'd be quite honest with you. I think a lot of the migration challenges which you are going through in Europe, you would not have those with Indians. I mean, this is not a remark on anybody else, but if you look by and large, I mean, Indians are disciplined, hardworking, family-centered, professional, real contributors to the country, society, and economy where they are. So I would actually urge very strongly that when countries look out at the world for potential partners, they shouldn't have a one size all kind of approach. I think, like you would do due diligence in business, please do due diligence about countries as well, about people, and I think you will get some very good answers in India. On IMEC, uh, you know we agreed to IMEC in September. Then we had this October 7th terrorist attack in Israel. And since then, obviously, there's a fair deal of turbulence in that whole region. But this I assure you, I think each one of the IMEC countries, I mean, we've all been talking to each other. We're all very determined to go ahead. So, to the extent there are building blocks which can go ahead, I don't think we're going to wait out. It's not like everything has to fall in place for something to start. I think wherever we can get moving, we will get moving, and in some cases, we have got moving. We are very, very determined that, in fact, this new corridor, which, in our view, I mean, one, of course, it has logistical implications, but we think beyond that, it has other implications. We see a lot of energy production possibilities there. We see a lot of new manufacturing coming up out there. But this corridor will be very important in an era of green hydrogen and green economy, green ammonia as well. Do take it from me. We are dead serious about it, and we think so are our partners. On Shobana, your question about the election, I am one of the few ministers who's not actually contesting the Lok Sabha, but I've been busy supporting candidates who are, including some of my ministerial colleagues. I've so far this election, I just came from Maharashtra yesterday night. I've done about 10 or 11 states so far. Look, from a person like me, it is an experience. I've done two Vidhan Sabha, state assembly elections. I've done Gujarat, I've done Karnataka. One went well, one didn't go so well, but there were learnings in both. I think this one would go very well. So I don't want anybody to have any doubts on that. My I would say I have in a way the objectivity of a person who's come new to the business. Also, to some degree, maybe I ask questions which normal people don't ask. I mean, simply because I'm new, in a way new to it. But I do sense in this at this time that there's a lot of to me there are two big takeaways or three big takeaways. One, that a lot of work which has been done in the last 10 years has actually filtered down to the ground, and there's a very good ground response. Number two, there is actually today with a lot of people a sense that their lives have got better. I think they have a metric to measure it before. And the third takeaway for me, which is personally very pleasing, I'm actually very impressed by how much interest there is in foreign policy across the country. I mean, I expected it in big cities, okay, Mumbai, yes, Calcutta, yes. But, when I see foreign policy interest, you get 2,000 people who come to talk to you in Bikaner and in Nashik and, in Bhuvanagiri, uh, in outside Hyderabad. I mean, then actually today that people understand today that this is globalized, that there is they have stakes really in how the nation is faring. I think to me that's been a very welcome revelation. Your last point, I agree with you. I think one big, you know, we are often being presented with a sense that there's today a deep competition between US and China, which is not untrue. But I think there's a larger point, and the larger point is that increasingly business choices will have to take national security into viewpoint. It will apply to every country, at least to every, you know, I'd say big or medium-sized countries. It will certainly apply to us. And I think business cannot be just pure business anymore. In many ways, it has not been, but often it has not been in a one-sided way. I think this will become a much more prevalent business practice across the world.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll go to the second round and I'll start with Jitesh, Lord Jitesh Gadia. Jitesh, the mic to Lord Gadia there, please.
Dr. Jaishankar, it's wonderful to be back in Delhi. Maybe a two-part question for you. This is a big year for the world in terms of elections. I think more than half the world of the world's population is going through some 70 countries. The narrative that you so eloquently described, do you think that would potentially be derailed in terms of some of both the rhetoric and the aftermath of some of the elections that may happen around the world? And maybe a second part, and also looking to the UK, India, what's your philosophy on trade deals, and how should that be part of statecraft in the 21st century?
Thanks. Mr. Sunil Bunjal.
Minister, in your very wide-ranging address, you covered many things. One, you specifically mentioned about the role of government and diplomacy in economics and business, since this is a business summit. Let's talk a little bit about our own neighborhood. You did talk about China right now. We still have a 100 billion deficit with China. But as a region, we are the lowest traded region in the world today. Do you see a possibility in the next 5 years or 10 years that we can figure out a way to sit across a table and have an actual conversation which allows us to carry on life as usual? Because today it's not, certainly isn't. In the neighborhood.
Just so that I'm clear, life as usual.
As far as business in the neighborhood is concerned, I'm talking about our neighborhood.
Do you have a country to the north and a country to the west in mind as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. No, I just wanted to be clear.
I'm being very specific.
Okay.
Can we sit with China or Pakistan and have a conversation
to
resolve what seemed like intractable issues right now?
Okay. No, because I wasn't sure whether you had Sri Lanka and Bangladesh or China and Pakistan. I was just checking.
Jai Galla. If you could pass the mic to Jai.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, my question is very specifically about China. And I know that we're competing at a geopolitical level and we have some disputes with them. But at the same time, from an economic point of view, we can't completely ignore them for many obvious reasons. And in my particular industry, which is the energy and mobility industry, electric vehicles you mentioned in your speech as well, 80% of the vehicles being produced today are in China. 80% of the raw materials being processed are being processed in China. And most of the technology, regardless of where they're building a battery factory anywhere in the world, the equipment is coming from China, whether it's US or Europe or anywhere. So in that type of situation, how do you balance these two priorities? One is, the challenge that you're having on a geopolitical level, but at the same time, ease of doing business, even Atmanirbhar is required. If we have to achieve that, China is required in that process.
Thanks. And Mukundan of Tata Chemicals.
Firstly, Honorable Minister, I want to compliment you on one great achievement in G20, which people don't talk about. That's inclusion of Africa into G20 at the moment. I think I want to compliment you for all the efforts you put in. But I have But I have a follow-on question on that issue. You spoke about the next presidencies with Brazil and then Africa. What can we do more to build our trade relationship? What are the opportunities, and what is your vision for relations with Africa and Latin America?
Um, the first question, yes, it's a big year for elections, a lot of elections going on in the world. But, my global assessment actually was not based on things going well. I mean, frankly, my global assessment is based on things already not going well, with the reasonable assumption that they will continue to not go well. So, definitely some elections are more important than others. We will not mention names, but some will be more consequential. But I can only say that when I look at many of the significant democratic, small d democratic elections this year, I don't think, where India is concerned, that our interests would be negatively impacted by an outcome. I think the nature of our relationship with different countries, our history, we don't have many of the alliance anxieties which some other countries in the world have. We don't have the subsidy concerns which many countries have. So I am, uh, I'm say, I'm confident. I'm not sanguine, but I'm confident that whatever the outcomes in different parts of the world in different elections, for us, we should be able to sort of keep the ship steady. I'm not saying that it's done on autopilot. It will require diplomacy. It will require thinking through. It will require relationships. All of that is there. I mean, in fact, when I spoke about wandering around this country and talking to people about foreign policy, I mean, one point which uh, I think they receive well is, we will have to grow in a difficult world. When China, the kind of growth path, the real years when China grew strongly, China had a very, very advantageous global environment. We won't have it. We don't have it. So we have to plan for that uncertainty. We have to build it into our calculations, but we need the kind of leadership and the kind of government and the kind of judgment which will take us through that turbulent era. On the philosophy of trade deals, we are for trade deals if they work for us. And I think the challenge in any trade deal is to get the right balance, because every trade deal is some element of give and take. I suspect the one you are particularly interested in, though you didn't explicitly mention it, I think they haven't yet got that right balance of give and take. And those negotiations carry on, and we'll have to really see where we go. On regionalizing the neighborhood, uh, you know, uh, actually, if one looks at especially the last 10 years, there's been a great improvement in regional connectivity and regional interdependence. If I for the moment look at the other countries I spoke about, if you look at Bangladesh, Nepal, uh, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, uh, uh, definitely Bangladesh, Nepal, you can see today there are road connections, there are rail connections, there are power grids, there are fuel pipelines, which didn't exist before. I mean, if you are to traverse the border, it is so much easier. The volume of business which is being done is more. Our access to ports, which is something we've never had on a national basis in Bangladesh, is actually something very big. A lot of these have great consequences for our eastern states and our northeastern states. So I would say, if I were to look at structurally, with many of with Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, things have actually gone well for us. Politics has gone steadily in Bangladesh, been a bit more erratic in Nepal, been very steady in Bhutan. That's the scenario there. In the case of Sri Lanka, we have three big proposals on the table that we are working on. One is a land bridge to Sri Lanka, one is a power grid to Sri Lanka, and the third is a fuel pipeline to Sri Lanka. We believe all three are doable. We think this will help both countries. It will certainly give Sri Lanka access to a lot of uh, Indian, products and services on scale. People saw, for example, after the Ukraine conflict, that when they source fuel out of India, it was significantly cheaper than negotiating it yourself. In fact, very often they couldn't negotiate supplies at all. So that is more doing well. I think with Maldives, our development projects are doing well. We definitely had some political turbulence. We are hopeful about managing it. I think things are a little bit more constructive after my counterpart came over. So that brings us to the two questions, to other neighbors, because then the China, I can, Jaidev, lead to your question as well. Where Pakistan is concerned, uh, look, 2 points here. One, we have struggled continuously with the fact that they have unrelentingly practiced terrorism, cross border terrorism. So, this attitude in our country earlier, that we put up with terrorism as a eccentricity of a neighbor, that's the way they are and we have to live with it. I think the people of this country made a very clear decision in 2014 that they're not going to accept it. So, in this country, I think the tolerance for any kind of cross border terrorism activity is very low. It is very clear that there will be consequences both across the LOC and across the IB if something like this happens. That is really the message of Uri and Balakot. Now, the ball is in their court. If they wind down, this industry which they have built up over many, many decades, uh, then people will treat them like a normal neighbor. If they make this their core competence, then obviously that will define their image. So we've been very straight with them that they have to make up their mind. They have to make up their mind, and part of the problem is also that after 2019 the then Imran Khan government took a number of steps which actually downgraded the relationship. We didn't do it, they did it. So, where Pakistan is concerned, I think our messaging has been very clear to them. And we have to see, they've also just had their election. We have to wait and see, what do the people who now come into power, what do they decide? Where China is concerned, I think it's more complex. There are, I would say, at least three aspects to it. One, the fundamental aspect that if peace and tranquility in the border areas is disturbed, you know, would you do business with somebody who's just barged onto your drawing room and is, trying to make a mess of your house fencing? You won't. There's a common sense proposition there. I mean, if a country has gone back on written agreements and is doing something on our borders, how can we then say that the business world will continue as normal and other things won't? So that's one complication. That doesn't, by the way, mean business stops, because the numbers show you business has not stopped. So you use the word we cannot ignore. Business in this country has not ignored China. In fact, business is buying from China. So I think we need to define the problem. The problem is, do we take precautions today? Do we actually identify a list of businesses, some more sensitive than others, and assess what the possibilities are there? The second issue for us, built up over the last 20 years, is actually the trade imbalance issue. And here we have, frankly, a problem with the business community of India, which is that business still is making choices based, really, it's a very, I would say, a price point choice which people make. I understand the compulsions of business, but in the long run, we will have to see how we encourage business to do much more domestic sourcing. And obviously, for that, we need to see much more domestic production. Now, we know, I mean, if I come to you today and say, don't buy China, buy everything in India, you'll say that, well, I can't buy. There are no vendors, there's no supply of that. So I'll have to do the chicken and egg at the same time. I'll have to encourage production in India while encouraging businesses to source in India. So we'll have to move that. It's long, painful, because we are actually making up for 20, 30 years of neglect of manufacturing. The third issue, because you mentioned a particular industry, I think in many countries today, we have to put a national security filter. A national security filter doesn't mean nothing comes, but a national security filter definitely means that in a business proposition, we have to evaluate certain national security sensitivities which may be there. So, where China is concerned, we will still encourage people in this country manufacture in India, source in India, procure from India, wherever possible. Try to think a little bit more medium term, long term than you can. But we have not completely and utterly prohibited people working with China. But frankly, we would much rather you work with Indian companies if there is an Indian option available to you. I, that I think is good for our national security. We hope you think that it is good for your own business in the long term.
Thank
Oh,
you.
sorry. No, I had Mukundan's question. Yeah. G20, sorry, Africa. We see, I mean, today, if one actually looks at our trade investment figures in Africa and Latin America, they're actually quite impressive. In fact, we do much more business than most, it's only the enterprises involved who really focus on it. But I have myself, tried to travel as much as I can. A lot of it was interrupted by the COVID. But I've seen, in both these geographies today, Indian products, Indian services, Indian project capabilities, Indian trade is very valued. I think we have established our reputation. I think our businesses are understanding the risks as well as weighing the opportunities. So, if you ask me straight out, yes, we would, as a policy, we would encourage much more business with both Latin America and with Africa. And certainly, when we are looking into a new government and saying, okay, what are the policy directions we are going, I want to tell you definitely one of the recommendations that I would be signing off at the end of this term to the Prime Minister is these are two geographies where we need to give very much more effort. And we see this on the ground. I mean, we are actually looking at bigger numbers and greater volumes.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I think it has been a very, very open, frank, and transparent conversation. Thank you for giving us the time, and thank you for sharing all this with us. We look forward to working with you going ahead. Thank you so much.
May I request President CII to hand over a token of appreciation to our esteemed guest, Dr. S. Jaishankar, Minister of External Affairs, Government of India. And can we have a nice, loud round of applause for this extremely invigorating session?